the Gazans and Hamas have an opportunity to end that, and that's to return the hostages and end this carnage. In previous actual genocides,
that's a lie, and you know it. You know it.
They're
shooting and killing civilians at humanitarian aid hubs, dozens of them on a daily basis. Literal children are getting shot in the face.
Piers, it is a good time.
It's a genocide.
Piers,
it's a genocide.
Piers, you are right. It is a good time for me to leave.
Okay.
I thought we were going to have a discussion,
See you later.
not propaganda.
In today's video, Ana Kasparian absolutely destroys Piers Morgan's panel on the Piers Morgan Show and even makes one of the guests, Mark Kimmitt, rage quit. I know, it gets really wild. Ana Kasparian went off on Mark Kimmitt over the US funding Israel's war while Americans struggle at home. Then things escalate further when Jonathan Conricus joins the discussion, defending Israel's actions and military decisions. So let's dive in and watch how Ana Kasparian shuts down Mark Kimmitt and Jonathan Conricus on the Piers Morgan Show.
Okay.
Thank you.
General Kimmitt, I appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much. We're going to be joined on the panel by Kaveh Afrasiabi, a former advisor to Iran's nuclear negotiating team who was arrested in the US for alleged spying before being pardoned by Joe Biden. But before we speak to him, I want to talk to Jonathan Conricus. A lot has been said in the last few minutes. What's your response?
Well, hello, everyone. You know, I can, even though I've never met the person who is constantly interrupting others, I don't think we've ever even communicated on X, but I can feel your frustration. No, don't interrupt me. I can feel your frustration. I can feel how sad you are. I can feel how difficult it is for you to see Israel teaching the Iranian regime a lesson and Israel winning on the battlefield.
About the Iranian regime getting targeted,
because you hate the Jews and you hate Israel. I can understand that you're having a tough time dealing with reality.
You have to actually address the substance of my argument. Why are IDF soldiers shooting and killing children at humanitarian aid hubs? You genocidal prick.
And frankly, really your talking points are tired.
The whole world sees you guys for what you are.
I'm not here to answer your questions, Mrs. Interrupter. I'm not here to answer your questions. Last time I checked, this wasn't your channel. This wasn't your channel, and you've done nothing but interrupt and talk nonsense.
Taking from the
You've
American
only been talking nonsense so far, and I've been sitting here and listening quite politely to your nonsense, and you keep on screaming over me
guys, we need to hear individually talking. Don't talk over each other. There's no point.
I can't stand these people and their disgusting lies. As children are getting slaughtered
talking, and then you started interrupting, and you're screaming.
At these humanitarian aid hubs. I can speak over you.
Not even facts-based.
Anna, listen, we can't have a debate.
And it's not going to work.
We can't have a debate if you don't let Jonathan let him. Let Jonathan say what he wants to say. Then you can respond.
Listen, Piers, this isn't going to work. Clearly, you can see that she's here to instigate.
Let him talk, please.
She's here to instigate. She is here to instigate. She constantly interrupts. That is not a way to have a meaningful discussion. And if I'd ask you to kindly, put her in place so that at least I could say 2 or 3 sentences.
Put her in place.
That's the first thing. Now I can understand the frustration of so many people that are Israel haters, disguising as liberals, disguising as humanitarians. I can see and feel, and I even have compassion for your feelings that you see the great empire that the Iranians built against us. It is being decimated piece by piece, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. And it must be frustrating. It must be frustrating to see Israel defend itself after a Hamas attack on October the 7th. And it must be frustrating to see Israel persisting and winning and defeating our enemies despite the efforts of the likes of you and many others who have teamed up against Israel. And I can understand the frustration, but guess what? It's not going to help. Your opinion isn't true. It is not reality-based. Just like you just said in the beginning that Israelis are fleeing. On the contrary, Israelis are lining up and there's actually a national airlift to get home.
From the jump, Ana Kasparian makes her stance clear. Billions in US aid going to Israel while American families struggle at home is outrageous, especially as Israel is, in her words, executing a genocide in Gaza. She backs it up with stats. civilian death tolls, children killed at humanitarian aid points, and a growing number of global human rights organizations calling out Israeli war crimes. Mark Kimmitt, trying to defend Israel's military actions, gets visibly frustrated. The moment Ana Kasparian calls it a genocide and accuses the US of complicity, Mark Kimmitt decides he's had enough and abruptly walks off the show. It was heated and maybe a little too real for him. Then enters Jonathan Conricus, and the temperature somehow rises even more. Ana Kasparian keeps the pressure on, but this is where things get messy. Ana's relentless interruptions, while rooted in passion, starts to grate a bit. It's hard to hear a full point when she's jumping in constantly, and that actually gives Conricus a bit of rhetorical cover. He tries to pivot the debate to personal attacks, saying Ana hates Jews and is not here for a real discussion. That kind of smear is tired and dangerous. Equating criticism of Israeli government policy with anti-Semitism shuts down valid debate, but the moment he pulls that card, you know he's lost the moral argument.
On the left, you end up sounding like you're, shilling for a vile regime. The Iranian regime oppresses women. Well, hang on. Let me hang on. Is it they oppress women?
I know what you're going to say. I know. I hate the regime in Iran.
Right.
I hate the regime.
So why wouldn't you want it changing?
I hate the mullahs. There are Armenians living in Iran right now who hate the mullahs. Okay, but regime change should not be spurred by the United States and Israel, which wants to install a puppet government on their behalf. And by the way, the Iranians know that. They know that. Polling indicates the vast majority of them want regime change. They don't want it to be done by Israel. You have to be clear about that, because I think there's an intentional misframing or false framing of what's happening in Iran right now and what the population actually wants. Now, with that out of the way, my issue, Piers, is that the United States has been expending its resources and has been essentially sending its soldiers to die in wars on behalf of Israel, a country that goaded us into invading Iraq on a false pretense of weapons of mass destruction. 4,000 of our soldiers died in Iraq. You didn't send a single IDF soldier. Not one IDF soldier was sent to Iraq. Our soldiers died on your behalf, Conricus, on your country's behalf.
Not at all.
And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. You guys are committing a genocide right now, yet you're a nuclear power that's not in the non-proliferation agreement. Why? Why is that? How come you guys get to play by completely different rules? You're genocidal. You're disgusting. The world sees you guys for what you are.
Let him
want the people of Israel?
Let him answer.
Hate the government of Israel.
Let him
You're
answer.
a genocidal government. You guys make me sick. You make me sick.
So deep.
You make me sick.
Let him
The
answer.
entire international community looks at your government and gets sick even thinking about it.
We know that he makes you sick, but let him answer.
For God's sake, we're trying to have a conversation here.
The history
and I'm trying
books
to
will
answer
write about
what you're
your
saying,
government
but you're
the
not
way
even
that Americans read about the
acknowledging me
Nazis
as
today.
a
Trust
person.
me.
Let me start by saying this. I'm with Ana Kasparian on the core issues. Her frustration over US tax dollars endlessly funding Israeli military actions, often at the expense of American interests and without real accountability, is totally justified. The US has sacrificed lives and treasure in Middle East conflicts, many of which were pushed by pro-Israel lobbying forces, including the disastrous Iraq war that left thousands of Americans dead and destabilized on the entire region. Ana Kasparian called that out with real clarity, and she backed it with facts that don't get said nearly enough in mainstream debate. But here's the thing, I wish she had toned it down just a little bit. When she gets too heated, going full Cenk Uyghur mode, it gives her opponents an easy out. That's exactly what happened when Mark Kimmitt rage quit the panel after being accused of defending genocide. He clearly couldn't handle Ana's energy, but it also meant he got to exit without addressing the substance of her argument. Then came Jonathan Conricus, and to be fair, I actually wanted to hear more of what he had to say, even if I expected to disagree. Instead, Ana jumped in so hard and fast that it turned into a shouting match. That worked against her message. Conricus dodged serious critique by claiming victimhood, saying Ana wouldn't let him speak, that she was anti-Israel or even genocidal. That's absurd. But by not letting him speak at all early on, Ana unintentionally helped him play that card. Still, let's not lose focus. Jonathan Conricus didn't refute her actual points. Israel has received over $260 billion in US aid since its founding, more than any other country.
Instead of just screaming at me and looking like a lunatic who just keeps on screaming at other people, could you for a second allow me to say two sentences? No, you don't speak on behalf of anybody but yourself. You weren't elected. You don't represent anybody. You're a talk show host and you don't represent anybody. You've never stood for anything. You've never fought for anything. You're a talk show host and you don't represent anybody. And the fact that you think that it's effective to accuse me of all kinds of nonsense and you think that that will rattle me, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Many and better people before you have tried and they have all failed. But let me tell you something. Your hatred is so showing. Your hatred of Israel is blinding you. You're not able to distinguish between different situations and you find yourself supporting a genocidal regime just out of your burning hatred towards Israel. And I think that is so compelling for people to see how you behave.
Okay, don't all start talking, otherwise I'm going to literally give up. All right, let me just look. Let me go.
I feel bad for the people of Israel.
Let me go back, if I may, to Kaveh. Let me ask Kaveh this question. Kaveh, in an ideal world, Kaveh, do you think it's right, as John Bolton said, that the young population...
This isn't fair. She's been screaming over me the entire conversation. I've said one sentence, and I've been sitting here for 45 minutes.
I agree.
I would really like to say one sentence without her screaming like some crazy person,
well, then
totally...
Let's see if she'll let
totally
you.
consumed by her hatred.
You guys are such victims.
Right, so I would like to say one thing. And please, could you contain yourself for 20 seconds? Could you contain yourself for 20 seconds, please? Like you've been screaming and ranting all over this debate, and it's not meaningful. People don't hear what you say. They don't hear me. Nobody makes sense of it. So please do me a favor, and allow me at least to say two sentences. The Iranian regime now is struggling like any dictatorship with a new and dynamic situation. They're not used to not being in the driving seat. They're not used to not dictating in events. And for the first time in 25 years, Israel is taking the initiative, and Israel has now peeled back the layers of the ring of fire around Israel, and Israel is, yes, and I can say this not officially as a spokesperson, but this is what I understand, Israel definitely is trying to bring about regime change in Iran. Why? Because it would be better for the entire region, for the Iranian people, and definitely for Israel.
But many people,
prosperity.
All right, but Jonathan, many people also... Hang on. Many people, Jonathan, also think there should be...
Israel
Hang on!
Look into it. That's
For goodness sake! Many people, Jonathan, also think there should be regime change in Israel because of what it's been doing in Gaza. So there's a lot of talk of regime change
elections,
generally.
Piers.
Yeah, well, okay, but
but that's called elections.
Sure.
And I have many friends. I have friends and family who feel the same way, and I have others who feel differently. And luckily for Israel, luckily for us who live here, and luckily for the 2 million Arabs who live in Israel, Israel is a democracy, and we get to vote, and we get to vote what we like. Currently, we have a government who I think is definitely should be criticized for many things and how it has managed those situations since October 7. But I think the government and the Prime Minister has done a very brave and good thing for the future of the region in attacking Iran.
Now, let's be clear. Ana's critique of US foreign policy and military funding is completely justified. She called out something that rarely gets discussed on mainstream platforms. The fact that American taxpayers continue to fund and arm a foreign government with a documented history of human rights violations, including attacks on aid convoys and civilian infrastructure in Gaza. That's not anti-Semitism, that's accountability. When she mentioned that no IDF soldiers fought or died in Iraq, while over 4,000 US soldiers did, she wasn't being provocative. She was pointing out how lopsided this alliance really is. Israel benefits from US protection, money, and diplomatic cover, while we shoulder the cost, literally and politically. And she's absolutely right to connect this to broader concerns about endless war and regime change campaigns, particularly against Iran. But again, I do think Ana's interruptions made it easier for Conricus to fall back to victimhood. He framed himself as the calm adult in the room being screamed at, which ironically let him avoid actually responding to the substance of Ana's points. And once he started with personal jabs like "you've never stood for anything" or "you're blinded by hatred," it was clear that conversation was off the rails. Still, let's zoom in on what Jonathan did admit, almost by accident. Yes, Israel is pursuing regime change in Iran. That's massive. This isn't just about defending against terror, it's about reshaping the region in Israel's image, and it's being done with the help of US tax dollars and diplomatic cover. That's not conspiracy. That's confirmed by Israeli military and political figures themselves.
Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.